spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes true in liberating strife, who more than self their country love, and mercy more than life. America, America, God gave their gold refined, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. Oh, beautiful for patriotry that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities weep, unmanned by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Why do we give? We give because it reminds us that all we have belongs to God in the first place. We give because it moves the mission of God forward and upward in this world. We give because an investment in the kingdom of God will never return void. We give because it breaks the temptation toward greed and materialism. We give because radical generosity leads to radical change in our lives, our churches, our communities, and in our world. We give because giving is a gift, not just for those who receive something, but giving is a gift for those who give. For Jesus said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. So what would it look like for you this year to be generous? To not just ask, what can I spare? But instead to ask, what will it take? When God's blessing comes to us, it must also go through us. Because generosity isn't just something God wants from us. Generosity is something God wants for us. That is the gift of giving.
Dear God, thank you for your goodness. Lord, I know you want me to be blessed and happy. And that's why, God, I pray you, please, let me have this Corvette I've been looking at. I really like it. And God, if it be your will, please make it cherry red. Amen.
Lord, I'm single. And I'd really like to find that special someone. I kind of thought you'd have this problem figured out by now. Anyway, now is the time, Lord. Make it happen. Bring me a man.
Lord, I know it is your desire to make your children happy, and I've got a situation here. All of my neighbors have gotten in-ground pools. I'm the only one on the block that doesn't have one. God, you can do better than this.
As you know, Lord, I just released my first album, and it's not getting the kind of attention I hoped for. God, I know that you are capable of anything. You're all powerful. So please, Lord, make my album trend. Make it trend, Lord, make it trend. Ignite social media with your holy fire, so that I may be glorified in all I do. Amen.
What's going on?
Why isn't this working?
Come on! I want this car! God, give it to me! Right now!
Hello? Hello?
I don't understand. Where's my pool?
Why is this not working?
What is wrong with this thing?
God, what are you doing? I want this!
What is going on?
I can't look bad in front of my friends.
Are you kidding me?
Come on, God!
What am I supposed to do?
Are you listening to me?
Give me a break here.
This stupid...
What is the matter?
God, I want my car!
God, are you even listening to me?
God, are you even listening to me?
As I drove up through Florida, through the cradle of the Civil War, passed through places that gave birth to the civil rights movement, and people still waiting to be received in Graceland, I thought of Bob and Joanne as I headed north and came up to the banks of the mighty Mississippi, turned west across the land of Lincoln, followed the pioneering spirit of millions before me as they chased their dreams in uncharted territories, driven by gold, the silver screen, discovering new land in the West. And as I watched cars and trains and planes and trucks and motorcycles and people just walking in the most random places, unexpected places, seemingly in the middle of nowhere, headed to no particular place, I was struck again by the fact that America is more than a country. It is an idea, and it is an idea that cannot be extinguished. The idea of freedom, liberty, and justice, not just for kings, but for beggars too. It's a siren song that can call across the ocean, across continents. It can reach a young boy in a small town in South Africa, a young woman in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, and it has reached all of you here as well. And not all the politicians and not all of the pundits on TV or the posts on social media will ever dim that idea. And as an immigrant to America, thank you for letting me be part of your great idea. And as I crossed over from Kansas into Colorado, it struck me that True Life Community is not just a church. It is an idea that is born in the mind of God, that He would create us so that He can be with us, that He would come and die on a cross so that He could save us, and come again one day so that where He is, we may be also. Now that's an idea that cannot be extinguished. An idea that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It's a siren song that reaches across the oceans and continents to a young boy in South Africa, to a young woman in Scottsbluff, and to all the places that brought you here today. And it is a powerful idea that not even the gates of hell will overcome. And thank you for letting me be part of that idea with you here at TLC. Who the Son sets free is free indeed. As you watched that video this morning, there was something that came to your mind, something that you have been earnestly praying about. And right now, you're carrying that prayer in your heart. Maybe it's for health. Maybe it's to mend a broken relationship. Maybe you're praying for a family member that they will rediscover God. Maybe it's for wisdom. Maybe it's for money. Maybe it's to have a family. Maybe it's for a Corvette. Cherry red, of course. Maybe it's for a husband or a wife. I've been praying for something for a long time. It's embarrassing, but I'll share part of it with you. 3 or 4 years ago, someone that I'd met through my girls playing tennis said that he would fund us to create a company to solve a solution that turned out to be, so far it's still unsolvable. We worked on it every day for about a year, but just could never find a solution. Finally, he decided that he had had enough and he'd spent enough time and money on the idea. But I keep coming back to it. And I'll pray often, almost daily, that God will give me the wisdom to solve it. But the solution always seems just tantalizingly out of my reach. As we were packing up our house in Florida for the move here, I was surprised at how many notebooks I had filled up with notes that were scattered all around the house on this idea. I joked with my wife that I'm scared that she will begin to think of me as the character played by Russell Crowe in the movie A Beautiful Mind, with all those random numbers and formulas written all over the place. 3 or 4 years of praying and working, a promising start only to end in constant string of failure. I prayed for 8 months that God would heal my sister from cancer, and she died. I've been praying for over 30 years for my other sister that she would somehow find her way back to God. So as you're carrying whatever it is you carry in your heart that you've been praying about, let's take a look today at where God is in all of this. The answer is that He is closer than you may realize. Telly Savalas, the actor probably best known for his portrayal of the bald-headed police detective Kojak, was tired and grumpy. He was at the height of his fame. Now, if you're under 50, you don't know who he is. He was like the Ryan Reynolds or Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or Margot Robbie, Scarlett Johansson of his day. He had a first-class seat on a flight to Italy, and he was looking forward to getting some peace and quiet without any interruptions from fans who wanted to talk to him or get his autograph. As he sat down in his seat and prepared to relax, he was approached by a man who said, "I enjoyed your work and have looked forward to meeting you for a very long time." Annoyed, Savalas brushed the man off with a few curt words of thanks and turned towards the window, he said, hoping to convey the message to the man that he did not want to be disturbed. But the man persisted. The man said, "I am your greatest fan and would love to invite you to dinner." Savalas again declined, turned back to the window, and the man, getting the hint, sat down in a seat just across the aisle from him. As the plane landed, Savalas wasn't in much of a better mood at all, and he became even more annoyed when the pilot came on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you how honored we have been for the flight and cabin crew to fly a very special guest on our plane." And he's thinking, oh, great. Now everybody knows that I'm here on the plane. It's going to be so much harder for me to be able to slip off the flight unnoticed. And the pilot continued, "When we get to the gate, I would like to ask that you all remain seated till our special guest, King Constantine of Greece, has deplaned, and you can leave the plane." At the gate, the man that Savalas had brushed off, King Constantine of Greece, stood up and left. And Savalas says he realized that he had been in the presence of a king and had never known it. The core assurance of the Bible isn't that God will forgive your sins. That promise is real, but it isn't the core assurance. You may have heard in sermons that the command, "fear not," appears more often than any other command. So maybe that could be the core assurance. Unlike Pastor Bob, I do not have this fantastic gift of faith I fear all kinds of things. Right now, as I'm standing up here speaking to you, I'm scared that I might strike out on my first official sermon to all of you. Every time I look over there to Dave, he has a secret hand signal that he will give me if I'm speaking too fast. And so I'm like, I hope everybody understands what I'm saying. Right now, Doug is here from the conference. You know, I've got to make sure that I suitably impress the conference guy. Well, our ministry here honor the legacy of Bob and Joanne. Right now, it's hurricane season in Florida. They're predicting a lot of activity this year. There's already been one massive hurricane. Fortunately, it missed Florida, called Hurricane Beryl. But what if another one turns toward Florida before we finally close on our house next week? Our realtor says if one were to develop and come towards Florida, it will stop all housing activity for a month. I'm worried about buying a house here, getting the furniture here, getting it all unpacked. I'm worried about my daughters who are stayed behind in Florida. I'm worried about the fact that there's probably things I should be worrying about and I don't know what they are. Frankly, I'm actually worried about so many things. I'm surprised I could even get up here and speak to you this morning. So the command, fear not, is a pretty important one for me, but it's not the central theme of the Bible. The most reoccurring promise in the Bible is the promise of the presence of God, that I will be with you. And in Genesis 1, we often read Genesis 1:1, and then we jump from that verse, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and then we jump into God, speaking things into existence. But in verse 2, we read, now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the water. Before any speaking, before any creating happens, God shows up on our planet. And there's no creation by Zoom. He shows up in person, and then he speaks light and sky, and separates the earth and sea and vegetation, and then the sun and the moon, and the animals of the air and sea, and the land animals into existence. And then he gets himself dirty as he forms dust together to somehow create Adam. And I don't know if God performed a transumbilical, single incision, laparoscopic surgery to harvest Adam's rib and cartilage to create Eve. Or if he maybe did it, the old school way with knives and bone saws and chest separators. I looked it up this week. It's a complex surgery. It requires precision and skill of a plastic surgeon or a thoracic surgeon. Don't look up images of the surgery unless you're okay with lots of blood and gore. And then they weren't left alone when they were on this newly created earth. They were promised the presence of God, that he would walk with them in the cool of the day. And then Enoch walked with God. The presence of Adam was with Noah, with Abraham, Hagar, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Isaiah, Amos, John the Baptist, Mary, Peter, and Paul, so many more. God spoke in flowers and in faxes and sunsets, with prophets and with priests. Through the Ark of the Covenant, the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, through the manna that he provided the Israelites. These were all constant reminders of his presence and care. And then Jesus, Emmanuel, was born. And suddenly, God was with us. And in the closing words of the book of Matthew, Jesus promises, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. And then in the book of Acts, the Holy Spirit that Jesus had promised comes down and fills all of those people at Pentecost. And now it's not just God with us, but God in us. And Paul goes so far as to say that the presence of God in the physical temple, he compares that presence to the presence of the Holy Spirit in us. And in Revelation 6, the souls under the altar, they shout out to the Lord, O sovereign Lord, holy and true, How long before you judge the people and avenge our blood? And the answer comes in Revelation 21, when John says he sees the holy city and he hears a loud shout coming back from the throne saying, now God's dwelling place is among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. It's the presence of God that gives courage to those who fear. Isaiah 41, fear not. Why? Because I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And even when death, like a thief, comes and steals that which we love, the psalmist says, I will fear no evil. Why? For you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. Yet as we go about our daily lives, as we pray for a covet, a spouse, a successful business, for health, for relationships, for wisdom, for lost keys and missing wallets and jobs and finding a parking space downtown and 1,000 other things, wondering where God is and why he isn't answering. And the fact is that we are in the presence of the King and don't even realize it. And this is not just for prophets and priests and holy men. No, it's for you dreamers and you doubters, for the skeptics and the curious, for those of you who are discouraged and disgruntled, for seekers and the restless, for you complainers, as well as for the devoted and the wise, for those of you who are impossible to please, and even for you unbelievers. We are all invited into the presence of God. And not just one day in heaven, but right now. Jacob was on the run. First, he had made a very unfair deal with his brother to get his birthright for a bowl of lentils. Now, when I was a kid growing up and my mother made lentils, I would try some, and I would think, that was a terrible deal that Esau had made. Then one day, my wife Janelle made this Indian-style lentils, and the moment I tasted them, I thought, wow, I would sell my birthright for these too. But while Esau resented his brother for taking his birthright, he is deeply, deeply angered when Jacob stole his father's blessing from him. And he's determined to go and kill his brother. And so we read in Genesis 28, Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. And then it says, when he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. Now, apparently this phrase, a certain place, means no particular place. It could be Coral Springs, Florida. It could happen to be Hampden Avenue. It could be your neighborhood. It might be your house. This description, a certain place, is really important in this story. So he stopped at no particular place for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. Now, most of you know what happens next. He had a dream, and in that dream, he saw a stairway up into heaven, reaching the top of heaven, and the angels of God were moving up and down, ascending and descending on the staircase. Now, when TLC first started, Bob, we had a little Sabbath school for kids. Janelle is looking to maybe be able to start that up again. I would sometimes go into the Sabbath school class. There were only 2 or 3 kids there with the guitar, and we would sing a song called We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder. You've all sung it, right? Now, I'm not sure where that song came from because there are no people climbing Jacob's ladder, just angels bridging the gap between heaven and earth. And at the top of the stairway, Jacob sees the Lord who talks to him, and he says, I am the Lord your God. I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. And then he wakes from his sleep, and this is what he says. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Think about that. In an instant, it's been transformed from no particular place. A piece of barren, forsaken land, scattered with rocks, selected purely because that happened to be where he was as the sun was going down. And now it's changed to the house of God, the gate of heaven, and he had not even been aware of it. It is possible to be in the presence of the King and not even be aware of it. And then he changes the name from nowhere in particular to Bethel, the house of God, the gate of heaven. This morning I'm wondering, could this happen to you? What if your house, what if your job, what if your 4th of July celebrations, what if your desk at work, what if that Zoom call, what if that seat on the airplane next to you, what if that email that you send out, what if the phone calls that you are on all become Bethel, the house of God, the gate of heaven? Because if God can show up at no particular place, he can show up in any of these places. And you can be aware of it. And before God showed up for Jacob, he showed up twice in an amazing story involving Jacob's grandfather, Abraham. There's some interesting parallels between Abraham and Jacob. God had promised both of them to make their descendants a great nation. And both of them decided to take matters into their own hands when they thought that God was not moving fast enough. Instead of waiting for God to fulfill his promise for a son with Sarah, Abraham has a child, Ishmael, with her servant, Hagar. And we read in Genesis 16 that Hagar looked on Sarah with contempt at her inability to have a child. And this enrages Sarah, fills her with anger and jealousy, and she makes her life for this slave, this Egyptian slave, so hard that she finally runs away with the son into the desert. And we are told that the angel of the Lord finds her by a well. And the word that's used there to describe God, the name of God, it's Lord with capital letters. For the Jews, the name of the Lord is YHWH. It was so sacred that they even refused to pronounce the Lord's name. And out of respect, they refused to write it out. So they would write out this variant, Adonai. And over the millennia, we lost how to say the name of the Lord. What does it sound like? How do you pronounce 4 consonant letters, YHWH? But this Egyptian slave, she's about to do something amazing that no one had done before, and I'm not sure that they've done it since. When the Lord finds her at the well, she's desperate, and apart from her son, she has nowhere to go. She has no prospects. This is no place in particular. And then the Lord says to her, go and submit to your mistress, Sarah. Now, if you're standing at the prayer vending machine, that's not the answer you want to hear to your prayer. But he also promises her that he will greatly multiply her offspring so that they cannot be counted. And then this is her response. She turns this whole YHWH tradition on its head, and she gives God a name. And what does she call him? Just 6 letters, but it takes 21 letters to translate into English. El Roy, which means you are the God who sees me. And she calls the well where this happens, Bir Laha Roy. I have now seen the one who sees me. The presence of God had been with her all of this time, but up until this moment, she had not seen him. 14 years later, Sarah again drives her away, and Abraham gives her a skin of water for her and her son. The water soon runs out. She's in the desert, and she realizes that they're about to die. She cannot bear to watch her son dying, dehydrating in the sun. So she places him under a bush and then heads off in the opposite direction. It says about as far as a bowman could shoot an arrow. And she sits down there and she waits to die. And then Elroy, the God who can see and the God who sees me, opens her eyes again. And she saw a well of water and filled the skin with water and nourishes her son back to full health. Elroy is closer than you realize. He's close enough to see and be seen. The king of Aram was at war with Israel, and he was starting to get pretty frustrated. He and his advisors would send out spies, and they would spy on the troop movements of the different soldiers in Israel. And when they found a place where the soldiers were going often, they would set up a trap to either capture or kill these soldiers. And every time they set up the trap, the soldiers inexplicably would change their movement, and they could never capture any of these soldiers. It happens so often that the king calls all of his counselors and advisors together, and he says to them, will you not tell me which one of us is on the side of the king of Israel? And one of the officers says, none of us, my lord the king, but Elisha the prophet, who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. It's like finding a spy camera in your hotel room. Seemingly unaware that if the words he speaks in his bedroom were made plain to Elijah, then his other words would be as well. He sends out spies to find out where the prophet is. And when he learns that he's in Dothan, he surrounds the city at night with this fearsome army of horses and chariots and soldiers. And Elisha's servant wakes up in the morning for his Starbucks coffee run, and he walks outside and he sees this fearsome sight. And it says that he was terrified. And he goes back to Elisha and he says, my Lord, what shall we do? Do not be afraid, the prophet says. And then he prays, O Lord, open his eyes that he may see. And then the Lord, again, YHWH, opened the servant's eyes, and he looked. And he saw that the hills were full of horses and chariots of fire around Elisha. What if we started praying that God would open our eyes when we're struggling, or if we're in danger, if we're burdened down with anger or guilt or remorse or shame? What if we prayed for our community, the people who live just the other side of this wall, in those apartments just to my left, or the guy in that caravan right there by the entrance where you turn in to the property? What if God opened their eyes to the horses and chariots of fire circling around you? Two followers of Jesus are walking on the road to Emmaus when a stranger joins them. It's Jesus, and he walks with them, he talks with them. They don't realize it until he begins to pray. And then they say, didn't our hearts burn within us as he explained the scripture to us? What if Jesus showed up on your road to Emmaus? Maybe it was your drive to church this morning. Maybe your bus commute to work. Maybe your cruise to some exotic Greek islands. Maybe the passenger sitting next to you on your next flight. Mary Magdalene wakes up early on Sunday morning. She's been crying all weekend at the death of Jesus. Arriving at the tomb, she finds it empty, and thinking that Jesus' body had been stolen, she runs to tell the disciples, and she returns to the tomb. She's racked with grief. Not only did they take his life, but now they have taken his body as well. And she hears a voice, woman, why are you crying? Who is it that you are looking for? And she turns to see a man that she thinks is the gardener, failing to recognize that it is Jesus, till he calls out her name. What if in your grief, in your anger, your frustration, your loss, you're in the presence of God and you don't even know it? It can be easy to miss the fact that you're in God's presence. And if you do, don't beat yourself up too hard. The disciples are on a boat taking Jesus across the lake when the storm blows up. They're skilled fishermen. They know how to deal with the storm. But they quickly realize that they are not going to survive the storm. Sleeping in the boat is Jesus, but they're totally unaware of his presence. And some of you are taking on your own storms of life right now. Maybe you're determined to make it financially. You're determined to work on your own salvation. You're determined to take on the odds and win. You're living busy, frantic, exhausting lives. And right there in the boat is Jesus, but you're unaware of his presence. But what if you were? What if you could settle down to sleep beside him, knowing that the boat won't go down with him on board? Or what if, like the disciples, you finally realize that he's asleep, and in your fear you call out to him and wake him up, and he calms the storms in your life? We have looked at stories of real people, nothing special about any of them, nothing special about the places they were at, just barren patch of land, a well, a house in a city, a road, a boat, a cemetery. But they all had extraordinary encounters with God. What if God is present for you, for me? What if he's present for our little church, for this broken community around this building, for our conference office? I couldn't find any information on what it was like dining with the King of Greece. But I did find what it's like if you travel with the King of Saudi Arabia. On a 9-day trip the Saudi king took, he traveled with 459 metric tons of luggage. To give you an idea of how much luggage that is, an elephant weighs somewhere between 2.5 and 7 tons. So he transported that amount of luggage, like 200 elephants with him on a 9-day trip. Included in his luggage were 2 Mercedes-Benz S600s. I don't even know what they look like. And 2 freestanding electric elevators. He went to visit a beach in France. They installed the elevator for him so that he wouldn't have to walk down the slope to the beach. He just got in the elevator and rode down. He travels with 1,500 people, including 10 ministers, 800 delegates, and 25 princes, who all have to fly on 36 different airplanes. He has a staff of 572 who attend to his every need. Every day, he has about 1,600 pounds of food flown from Saudi Arabia to wherever he is to ensure that he has enough to eat. All the hotel staff at the hotels where he stays, they're all replaced with his own staff so that his every whim is accommodated, right down to the way he likes to drink his coffee in the morning. What if you got invited to dine with the king and you didn't realize who it was? I found a thread on Reddit. A mother with a 13-year-old son, she's going away on a 6-day business trip, and the mother writes on Reddit, "I'm terrified that my 13-month-old won't want me when I return. He's going through an I only want familiar people phase, and I'm afraid by leaving him for 6 nights that he will not want me and will not be comforted by me when I return. Please tell me that it will be okay and that he will still want me and love me when I return." When I read that thread, I was like, oh no, Reddit's just, not going to be kind to this person. And so I was reading the comments to see what they were going to make fun of her. But actually, all of them, every single one, is filled with stories of people who have been through that same experience and telling her that it would be okay. And as I was reading that, it dawned on me that God is like that mother. He can't bear to be away from you for even 6 days. He longs to be with you. He longs to be loved when he returns. This morning I came in here early to get some of the AV stuff set up. Last Sabbath, while Bob was speaking, I took some photos of all of you sitting over here, and I just spent some time walking through the pews, praying for you. I don't know all of your names yet. I'm sure I'll learn them. And if you weren't here last week, and you're a guest today, that's okay. I prayed for the guests as well. And Harold, I prayed for you as you're bound to that little scooter over there. For too long, the presence of the Lord has been here, and some of us have not been aware. I prayed that God would open our eyes so that we will see. He has done it for others, and I'm confident that He will do it for you.